Welcome to the Taxing Subjects Podcast. I'm Ryan Norton. It's almost tax season. We're filming basically 1 week from the day that it opens, January 28th. However, some tax professionals are still figuring out what software they want to use. And whether you are looking to make a change or if you're already a Drake user and you're just curious about what's new in the software, today we're going to discuss that. And I'm joined by two representatives from Drake Software, the Education Tax Team Lead, Amanda Watson.
Thank you, Ryan.
And the Director of Education, Christine Reynolds.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, you two. It's great to have you both back. Today we're going to look at the enhancements for the data entry, some security changes, and just some other efficiency and related tools in the new Drake tax for 2019. With that said, let's just jump into it. First things first, what are the enhancements related to tax law changes? I know that there will probably be some questions about that and how that's represented in the software. So could you briefly talk about what tax professionals will see when they boot up Drake Tax this year?
Okay, well, what they'll see when they open Drake is they're going to be very familiar because the program is basically the same. The functionality is the same. It's fast, easy, reliable, just as it always was. But there are going to be some key changes, again, relating to the tax law changes. And one of those changes that is huge for all preparers is the change of Form 1040. It's a big one. And as most people know at this point, the IRS has shortened the Form 1040, simplified it, and it is now, instead of two full pages, it is 2 half pages. And Drake is going to be printing each of those half sheets on one side of a paper. So if you printed it, it would just print one-sided. So page 1 and page 2 are actually going to be on one page.
That's really handy.
It is. So you're going to see everything there. But it is using a building block approach. So there are 6 additional schedules that are new that will only be used to supplement Form 1040 if needed by the taxpayer. And those must be printed on it's on page. So there's a dedicated page for each schedule, even though some of them look rather small. The IRS has stipulated that they must be on their individual page. And so that will be a huge change, learning how to navigate those form changes.
What does that look like in data entry when you're going through and processing the return?
It's a great question, Ryan. And the good news is that it's going to remain relatively the same. The data entry process will be the same as our preparers have grown accustomed to in prior year versions of Drake. You're going to use the same data entry screens to complete your tax return. So the return prep process is going to be about the same as they have always had. The difference in the challenge with the new forms is going to be reviewing it for accuracy at the end of their tax prep process because everything is moved, and explaining that new form to their clients because, for example, if you had a Schedule C, Ryan, where it was last year is not where it is this year, the income. So it's a little bit of a learning curve that way.
Yep, and data entry, essentially, I mean, you explained data entry is the same, but just to give you an idea, for example, on screen 3, it looks just the same as it always has in the past, but then there's a section that it indicates that the information entered in that section will generate a schedule. And so when you're entering data, you don't have to worry because we'll just do like we always have, and we'll use the data entry entries to determine what forms and schedules produce.
Well, with those screen changes, that sounds like it's really handy. But what are some other things that people might be concerned about when it comes to their new year tax software?
Well, we have just finished our update school season. So we've seen thousands of our customers over the last couple of months. And the couple of things that I hear the largest amount of concern about are, of course, the qualified business income or QAI deduction and the 2106 or unreimbursed employee expenses because those are huge changes for a lot of taxpayers. With the QBI, I think that in industry wide, we have all been trying to wrap our head around what is QBI, what constitutes that. So there are a lot of very smart people working on that, and we have some of the best here at Drake who are working on implementing the qualified business income deduction into our 1040 package as well as our entity packages so that it flows out correctly and it'll calculate seamlessly for our preparers with the simplified worksheet and the complex worksheet. So it should be pretty easy. Easy is probably not the right word to use, but hopefully it will be pretty seamless with all the work that we've had put into it.
And if listeners are curious about QBI, we've actually interviewed some people from Drake on this podcast, and you can find that on Drake Software/blog, and then under the podcast section, and just look for QBI.
Oh, yes, those are some of our really smart people.
Bob and Elena were wonderful.
Wow, yes, they're great. So QBI is definitely a big topic that people are really concerned about. But as I mentioned earlier, the 2106, which is the form used to claim unreimbursed employee expenses, the ability to deduct those has gone away for the large majority of taxpayers who have used that form. And a lot of tax preparers are concerned about that and how that will affect their client and their tax situation. So the data entry for that is about the same. There's only a select number of people who qualify. But this also brings us around to the federal versus the state, and some states decoupling, and some states may allow the 2106 and when the federal doesn't for a certain set of people. So in Drake, it's really simple. You just fill out the form, and if your state is assigned and your state is eligible for that deduction, we'll just carry it to the state for you.
That's great.
And it's the same on a lot of federal forms. We're going to make it easy for those states to pick up the federal amounts, even if the federal is not really participating in that specific item.
Now, in Drake, in years past, you have been allowed to compare prior federal returns for an individual client. And you brought up the states. Is there a change related to that, being able to compare old returns for states?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We have a new compare worksheet that we've created for the states. So just like in the past, you can view the compare worksheet for the federal side of things and use the comp screen if you need to make entries. We've added that for the state.
That's fantastic.
Yep. So that's going to be real helpful in helping tax preparers explain some of these changes.
What about other worksheets in the software? Have you developed any new worksheets for Drake Tax this year?
Absolutely. Amanda mentioned with QBI, there's going to be additional worksheets. Yes. And in any case, when a worksheet is necessary, it will be provided because worksheets are great. We know that they explain how all of the figures tally out, like all the information that flows to the form. And not only are they helpful for the tax preparer, but they also help the tax preparer explain to the taxpayer why the numbers are the way they are.
That's really handy, especially if somebody's sitting across from you in your office. So
yes,
right.
You're like, look at my worksheet here. This is why.
One worksheet that we did add that people I think would be interested in is the state and local tax SALT worksheets, because that's now limited. So we have a new worksheet for that. It's going to be very helpful.
Something else that we've added to the software, or we've increased in the software, are the return notes. Mm-hmm. And notes are especially helpful. They've always been in the software. They're for informational purposes only, and they produce with each tax return. And there are lots of new notes that will explain the variations of the software now that there are so many different changes. That's
fantastic. One question I would have is, let's assume that I am a very knowledgeable tax professional who does not need those notes, which is fiction. But let's assume that I am. Is there any way for me to turn those notes off if I just want to get done with the business of processing a return?
Absolutely. But I do want to caution, even the smartest and most knowledgeable tax preparer should read those notes because they're very important. But in the part of your return review, if you want to hide a note because maybe you know why that note is generating, we have added the ability at the request of our customers to hide notes individually, like one by one, on a new screen in data entry, the hide screen.
Yep, and I think that's great because it gives the preparer flexibility to streamline just the whole process in general. Right. If he doesn't need to see that note because he understands, he or she can hide it.
Let's move on to some other data entry related changes that aren't necessarily tied to changes in tax law. What else is new in Drake Tax on that front?
A large portion of our resources have been dedicated to implementing the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and the form changes. It's huge. But we have added a few new things. And one that I'm most excited about is an import feature for Form 4562. And that is our, we have the 4562 screen, which is the depreciation detail screen where tax preparers enter their assets for depreciation. And in the past, it's been a manual entry thing unless you have carried them forward from a prior year. But this year, we have an import feature that will allow preparers to import assets from an Excel file, spreadsheet, CSV file directly into the program. And we've spent time validating the data, so no bad data gets in there. It's much like the 8949 or Schedule D import, if anyone's used that. So this is, I think, a big help for a lot of preparers, and I'm pretty excited to see how people like it. Another thing that we've done, we have added additional link backs on the 1040NR, added some K1 sorting and viewing features to our fiduciary package to match that of our S-Corp and partnership packages. And we have a list of little small changes that we do have available for people, but those are some of the big ones I can think of outside of the tax changes. One other thing I want to mention before we move on, because I think it's very important. Drake has this year, for Drake 2018, we have added a new message page system for pending returns. So when you send a return for e-file, when you transmit that return, immediately Drake sends back a P acknowledgement, P for pending. And in that pending acknowledgement, we are going to message page the return. And the reason for this is to help prevent duplicates, because without that message page, the return is actually eligible to be sent again. And we have found that some preparers may forget or may not be sure they've sent the return, and they send it again and they end up with duplicate acknowledgments. So adding that message page for pending returns is going to add efficiency to our preparers' workflow, so they'll know that return is pending just by going to view mode. So it's really going to streamline things there for e-filing as well.
That's great. Well, outside of data entry changes, what are some major security-related enhancements? Because I know, especially on the blog and in the podcast, we talk a lot about data security, and it's been a really big thing since the Security Summit was founded to raise awareness of issues surrounding data security and how that is a threat to the tax industry, because the tax industry handles financial information, and cyber criminals really want that information to file fraudulent returns, any number of things related to identity theft in general, but especially for fraudulent returns. So what are some major security-related enhancements to help secure either your account or what have you for Drake Tax?
Well, I don't know if this one's considered major, but you speak of awareness, and awareness is really, really important. So one thing that is just a small change that each person who enters Drake software for the first time, any preparer that logs into the software, they'll have to view some security messaging. And it just, again, it provides awareness. It's got helpful tips that were compiled by the Security Summit, important information that just kind of prompts you to think about ways that you could be more secure. So you'll see that messaging when you install the software and when each preparer enters the software for the first time. So it's just a one-time thing to raise awareness. And then we've also this year implemented the ability to use multi-factor authentication when entering the software. And this is not a requirement as of now, and it's something that could potentially be a requirement in the future. And I think if a lot of us have already enabled multi-factor authentication in other areas. For example, I know you have it for your Amazon account. I have it for my PayPal account, and it makes me feel better to know that there's that extra step required to log in.
A lot of people may already have this also if they use like a third-party web mail service like Gmail or Hotmail or the new Outlook.com from Microsoft. And it is usually optional, but you can add in that extra factor for authentication to get into your account. And it's a really good idea. We could go on and on about why you should have unique passwords and all that for a different podcast. But it is a good idea to make sure you're keeping your account secure, because these cyber criminals target your actual tax prep software account, because they can use it to, again, file those fraudulent returns. And if it's coming from your account, it looks a lot more legitimate. So it's a good idea, and I think it's a great implementation by Drake.
Absolutely. And even though it's not required, we talked about it at the update schools, and I really feel like there's a great interest, and that preparers really see the need, and we hope that they at least try it out. And it's one of those features that you can enable and try it out. And for this year, at least, if it's not for you, you can disable it pretty easily.
But I think it will really give preparers a peace of mind, and also think about how much your clients trust you, and the trust is so important. So anything you can do to protect that is important.
We've talked about the security messages whenever you install it or load up the program. New MFA, multi-factor authentication. What else is in Drake Tax, whether it's directly in Drake Tax or maybe an integration with something else, like another Drake product?
Well, Secure File Pro is a big one. Anytime we talk about security, one of the things that comes up as good practice is not sending information using your email account, because email is really not that secure. So Secure File Pro is a really great tool. It's essentially a secure website that a preparer can create for their office and use it to exchange documents. So instead of sending information to someone's email box, they're sending it up to the cloud. So Secure File Pro is something really important that we like to talk about. And we integrated it with Drake Documents last year, which makes it really easy, even easier to use the tool. And so this year we have some additional integration that we've added to Drake Documents that has to do with Secure File Pro. And you have now access to all of your settings from within Drake Documents, and you can access the guest exchange, which is another feature of Secure File Pro. And so I know that the teams here at Drake Software, the development teams, they're doing a lot to make that product really, really easy to use.
What does the guest exchange look like? So Secure File Pro is you add clients to a Secure File Pro account so that you can exchange those secure documents. But what does the guest exchange do? How is that different?
The guest exchange is a really great tool if you want to exchange documents with someone one time. Maybe you need to send documents to your mortgage broker or your doctor or maybe some business associate, and you want to do so securely. You can just use the guest exchange without creating an account for that recipient or for the person who's sending you documents. So it's just an easy way to quickly exchange documents securely.
I know you two are very busy, so this is the last question, update schools and what have you. So before you go, what are some other enhancements, maybe just stuff related to efficiency, that are on the docket for Drake this year?
Some enhancements that they're just small, but I think they could make a big difference in your workflow are the addition of being able to customize the software using colors. The Client Status Manager, which is your list of all the tax returns that you have for the current tax year in progress. It's an excellent tool for getting like a snapshot of your workload for the day. And there's a status column, and that status changes as the workflow of the return changes. And a lot of those statuses will change automatically by certain events, or you could create your own custom statuses. So to use that tool even more efficiently, you can now identify colors for the certain statuses. So if you make all of your EF pending returns a specific color, then you can filter by that, or you could, without filtering, you can just look and you can tell the status of the return right there on the home window. And we also added colors in the scheduler, the ability to set labels and colors for different appointments. So at a glance, you can look at your scheduler and know, okay, these are all of my new clients coming in for today, or my business clients, etc. So stuff like that really I think just makes a small difference as you're tweaking your software. Every year you install your software. A lot of those settings you're going to carry forward every year, but there are new things that you can do to tweak your software and make it even easier to use. Another thing that is just a small change that would make a big difference to some is the ability to add a special character when you are entering in your preparer name. In the past, when you created a preparer, you were not allowed to use certain characters. So now if you wanted to add a comma or a period, you can do so, and that information flows to other documents that produce. For example, letters. The letter will print the preparer's name, and this time it's comma. It's Amanda Watson, comma, EA. You have the ability to add those special characters. Something that you probably would not know to go in the software and make that change, but now you do because you're listening, and you can make that change, and you're just making your software more custom and better every single year.
That's great. Any other changes before we sign off?
Well, this isn't really a change, but I want people to know that with all of these changes, especially the tax law changes, the QBI, that we in the education department are working very diligently to produce help for those using Drake. And we're working on a series of videos to help explain how to appropriately calculate QBI and Drake. So we'll have a video series. We'll start with a few and they'll get more complex, and just to walk people through the steps. And those are our short video tutorials we hope will be helpful. And we have several other videos slated to be recorded soon too about many of the features we talked about today.
That's right. If there's something new, we probably have a video for it, or we're working on a video for it. And videos are really helpful, but I think another great resource that I want to point out is the Drake Software Knowledge Base. Mm-hmm. I know that there are folks that are working hard to keep that up to date and provide just detailed information about some of this new stuff.
It's fantastic. I think it's one of our most overlooked resources.
Yep. And you know how to get to it, right?
Well, of course. You can use your friend Google or your favorite search engine, but you can also just click the help button from your toolbar in Drake.
Before we go, when do you think those videos will be available? I know that if it's a wide range of topics, it might not be something you can just predict right now, but you said you have some that are getting ready to come out. Do you know roughly when those will be ready for public consumption?
We hope to have, we're publishing new videos now, but specifically like the QBI, maybe like early February, which I think would probably be a good time when people are transitioning over to business returns. So we hope to get those out as soon as possible, but
that's great.
We want to make sure and get them right. And with the final regs for QBI just coming out and things like that, we are making sure that we're getting the videos right to be helpful.
Well, I know you'll both be very busy with those videos, and I just want to thank you again for being here, taking time to sit down with us and talk about Drake Tax. Christine, Amanda, I'm sure we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
And that'll be it for today. We'll see you all on the next Taxing Subjects podcast.